Thank you, and welcome friends to the second episode of Hobson's Choice, otherwise known as Take It or Leave It. I'm Michael G. Hobson, and for this episode, the G stands for generosity, or more precisely in this case, its absence. I ask, how does a president make the citizens of his country feel better after being battered by Hurricane Harvey? This president opens his vault of hate and targets a minority for expulsion. In June 2012, then President Barack Obama used an executive order to create a landmark policy on U.S. immigration, DACA, the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrival, which was instituted to protect the children, called Dreamers, brought here by their parents as infants and who have been raised as Americans. To remember, President Obama needed an executive order to enact such a comforting policy needed to protect a segment of Americans who are not legally considered citizens, but who were, in all other aspects of American culture, considered citizens. You see, the Republicans were opposed to it. Not because there was anything wrong with the policy. The Republicans had more to do with their dislike for their former president, black man. The temerity, they thought, and they said, of this man to enact policy without our consent. That is how low the Republican Party has fallen. So it's not really a surprise that the Republican Party gave birth to the Mad Hatter. Now, the Mad Hatter, who happens to be the world's most famous segregationist, says the Dreamers will be looked at with heart and compassion. Heart and compassion. On episode one, I showed you these pictures, the size of a normal human heart, and an actual replica of the Mad Hatter's heart. A heart filled with Mad Hatter memorabilia. Now, the Mad Hatter insists that he has compassion for children. It was the little babies dying from Syrian dictator Bashar al-Assad's chemical attack that provoked Trump into thumping his chest and sending those 56 missiles into an unoccupied landing strip in Syria to create a few cracks in the cement. The Mad Hatter, noted money lover, still thinks of Dreamers as little babies. And though the concept of kicking minorities out of the country always brings great pleasure to the Mad Hatter, the idea of being mean to babies is troubling. So he left the announcement to his underling, the racist Crocker, heretofore known as Foghorn Leghorn. Heart and compassion. Mad Hatter insists that he cares for these people, but he's willing to send them back to a country their parents left for good reason. Heart and compassion. It is, as Obama stated in his response to this latest atrocity, a political maneuver. When Obama instituted the program, more than 24 governors, all Republicans, led by the governor from Texas, what a shock, sued the federal government to have the policy revoked. The hatred for former President Blackman went through the state capitals. Apparently the modus operandi for Republicans was twofold: hate the Democrats and block anything President Blackman's administration initiated. The case went to the Supreme Court. The decision was a 4-4 tie. That's what happened when extreme conservatives get seats on the bench and vote party over rule of law. It would be easy to legislate the Dreamers are American citizens, and maybe now that it's going to be their idea, the Republicans finally can get behind it. Look how moral we can be, they will say. Mad Hatter doesn't like the look of this. He knows what it looks like to the American people, that the president is being mean to the little babies. But he had no choice. Those Republican governors were set to begin another lawsuit and backed him into a corner. It may not look good, but at least by sending Foghorn out to announce it, he saved himself the pain. The Mad Hatter doesn't like pain. Heart and compassion. This is Obama's quote. This is about whether we are a people who kick hopeful strivers out of America or whether we treat them the way we want our kids to be treated. It's about who we are as a people and who we want to be. You don't get that kind of eloquence now. But who do Americans want to be? If they were to rank in descending order the characteristics they would want in an American, would being white be first on the list? What about those dreamers? It is an apt description for them, but 91% of those working-age dreamers are employed. They contribute to the economy. They do not have criminal records. They aspire to the American dream. What they aren't is white. That's it. That's all they are not. And for anyone to argue that this particular segregation of people has anything to do with other than skin color, well, they're not paying attention. Ike Brannon of the Cato Institute, a conservative research group, said, getting rid of DACA reduces the number of skilled workers and a lot of industries are facing worker shortages. To push this now is really an inopportune time. Brandon estimates that repealing DACA would hit the federal government straight in the pocketbooks. By deporting these taxpayers, he forecasts a potential $60 billion loss in tax revenue and a $280 billion hit to economic growth over the next decade. Wait till the Mad Hatter hears those numbers. To him, it'll be $1 billion in the next 2 years. Maybe $2 billion. Listen, for all this talk about Hart, I have no doubt that if they were on a boat in the ocean and his wife in a knapsack filled with $1,000 bills fell overboard and he could only save one, well, if that ever happens, let's hope Melania is a good swimmer. Heart and compassion for the little babies. Not knowing that the median age for these dreamers is 22. So they're not little babies. They are important cogs in the American system. So why do it? Why not simply extend that executive order until Congress comes up with a permanent plan? Of course, the base doesn't like that idea. The base. Always talking about the base. Well, what is the base? And why is the base so influential? To the Mad Hatter, the base is everything. For with them, he finds the love and adulation he craves. The crowds are always massive. The stadium's overflowing with followers. But still, those little babies. I have a love for these people, he says. Hopefully Congress will be able to help them and do it properly. Yet a memo arrived at Capitol Hill later that day, and in that memo was this passage. The Department of Homeland Security urges DACA recipients to use the time remaining on their work authorizations to prepare for and arrange their departure from the United States, including proactively seeking travel documentation, or to apply for other immigration benefits for which they may be eligible. In other words, prepare to vacate the premises. Since Foghorn's announcements, protests have been organized in many American cities. By now, by my count, that's 12 organized protests against the Mad Hatter since his election. I think he likes crowds so much he doesn't care whether they are with him or against him. So leave it to John McCain, seemingly the sole voice of reason, to make a statement that is easily the most proper. The federal government has a responsibility to defend and secure our borders, but we must do so in a way that upholds all that is decent and exceptional about our nation. Till next time, my friends, be well.